Gatha, for the sound of the bell, mind calm, body at ease, breathing quiet, sentiment benevolent. Dharma friend sitting still in vital silence, wanting nothing, we practice eco-Buddhism together. The sound of the temple bell booms for all to cease from conflict. May the way of Buddha usher in the dawn of nonviolent global village forever. Here is the after sound of the bell. Thunder of silence, light after Dharma, rain. Om, Omaga, Virokana, Mahamudra, Mani Padma, Vahaprataya, Om.
Please join me in chanting the three refuges. We'll do it first in Sino-Korean, and it's just throw your voices in. It's okay if you don't know the words, and then we'll say it again in English afterwards. Jisim Quinmyane Shibang Sanse Cheman Chai Sanju Ilche Chi Shin Quinyan Ne Shi Ban Sam Se Che Man Chale San Chu Il She Dhamma Jung Chi Shin Quinyan Ne Shi Ban Sam Se Che Man Chale San Chu Il Che Sangai Please repeat after me as we say the three refuges in English. I go to the Buddha as my refuge.
I go to the Buddha as my refuge.
I go to the Dharma as my refuge.
I go to the Dharma as my refuge.
I go to the Sangha as my refuge.
I go to the Sangha as my refuge.
Before we continue, I'd like to read a land acknowledgement. On this day, we acknowledge that this land where our temple buildings stand has been the home of many people. It's been the home of native peoples, the Potawatomi, the Odawa, the Ojibwe, the Council of the Three Fire Tribes, and also of Black Americans. We know that this neighborhood used to be a historically Black neighborhood during times of racial segregation and oppression. For our own awakening and for the awakening of all life, may the benevolent energies of our meditation, chanting, and full presence here at this service extend to all beings in this planet and throughout time and space. May there be a deepening of our interbeing. May peace prevail and wars cease. Let us sit again for a brief time of meditation. Please feel free to stretch and sit comfortably. Good morning.
Good morning.
I am acutely aware that it's a delight to see all of you this morning. I know that some of us know each other quite well. Some of us don't know each other at all. But may we hold this as a sacred space for exploration and to hear in our hearts what we feel like we need to hear today. And it's a deep honor and terror for me to be part of this morning with you. I find it a little ironic how nervous I feel because one of my day jobs is working as a Unitarian minister, where for about 20 years I've worked with different congregations and I'm very used to preaching. I'm very used to standing up in a robe. And when I was ordained, I received an ordination stole like this. And when I feel like I'm in that setting and in a pulpit, I feel like I have standing. Like I went to school for that for a long time, that I know how to do biblical exegesis and talk about things that connect that to our everyday lives. But in this context, I'm not a teacher. I have no standing. I have no casa. I have no robe. I'm slightly envious of these nice old school robes that used to be handmade, custom ordered from Korea. And that's not something that I can just order on Amazon these days. And so I show up in a certain way empty-handed, but in a certain sense, beginner's mind is not a bad thing to cultivate once in a while. I'm aware of how much my inclinations towards reaching outwards, whether it's to tradition or scripture, is sometimes taking me away from being alive in the moment. I sometimes have this urge to be anywhere but here. Anybody else relate to that? You know, yesterday I was at a fair, the Livonia, the Spree in Livonia. It's like a traveling carnival, comes around once a year. And so I went around with my kids, got one of these lemonades that's like all sugar. And it was a delightful experience. But one thing that I noticed is as I was walking around, I was seeing like a young family with a newborn walking around, and they looked all romantic. And then I was thinking of, you know, my divorce and that bringing up feelings. And I'm like, why am I being drawn to that drama instead of just being here and enjoying this moment right here? Now, there were lots of loud sounds and, you know, the hydraulics on the different rides and children screaming and the temptation of all of those elephant ears with the powdered sugar on top. Like I'm salivating just remembering it. But again, being pulled into all of these moments that are anywhere but here. Once in a while, I think of getting back to the present experience a little bit like climbing into the cockpit of some kind of craft that I didn't know how to fly very well. But it's at least like getting back in the seat and being like, okay, centered. Now, where do we go from here? And it's sort of like coming back into that centered space, reclaiming a sense of peace and centeredness and agency. But even the word cockpit is kind of a funny thing. We also randomly had an argument with my 10-year-old this weekend, not a real argument, but like one of these playful ones where in Minecraft, he had built this elaborate hot air balloon that was really cool. And then there was a flight deck on the second level, like underneath. And then he was referring it to that is the cockpit. And, his older sister was like, well, that's not a cockpit. That's just a hot air balloon. And I'm like, well, what? So I get curious. And again, anybody know the history of the word cockpit? It goes back to like the 1580s, where they would quite literally have rooster fighting. And there'd be a pit where they would fight often to the death. Very high conflict, a lot of drama. And then, within a century, people were using that metaphorically to talk about any environment where you're in a confined quarter with high stakes and some conflict. And so it's not terribly surprising that then translates to being generally metaphorical to maritime boats and ships, where it's like under deck, but where the surgeon was working along with a lot of the admirals making wartime decisions under deck. High stakes environment, not very pleasant, confined quarters. And then eventually found its way to, airplanes and cars and things like that. We sometimes talk about monkey mind in our meditation, or where our mind goes, but sometimes it feels like monkey mind actually sounds more playful. Sometimes the things that go through our heads aren't always as peaceful as a monkey swinging through trees. Sometimes there's outright battles going on in our own minds. And so how do we climb into those moments and find a sense of peace and agency and wisdom to know that we're doing the right thing in the world, and that our lived experience doesn't create more suffering than we already get to deal with? How do you do it? Say again?
One breath at a time.
One breath at a time. Yeah. Anyone else?
I think I relate a lot to you, where I'll catch myself in the moment, like drifting off and then recentering.
Yeah. And it's nice to be able to catch ourselves, to like when we see ourselves being somewhere else, to notice that. And sometimes that noticing brings us back. Sometimes it's a single breath that brings us back. And there's so many different practices that we try to cultivate to bring us back to this present moment. Before I went to seminary and studied theology, I studied philosophy in undergrad. And there, read a lot of continental philosophy and existentialism, where it also talked about the importance and terror of like being alive in the world. Like one of the gathas we regularly chant here is, "Don't waste your life." Like, yeah. But so much of the Western tradition brings with it too a sense of alienation. Like it's creating this sense of authenticity, but also by a kind of overstated self-reliance, where this is all on you. And when we cultivate that to a high level, it's very alienating, where it's not very centering to be disconnected from other people and from the world around us. And one of the challenges of Zen for me is to cultivate a kind of both and. Like it doesn't say like don't read anymore or don't know your tradition, but how do we stay in the present moment and use different tools and resources that enrich our daily living and our lived experience, rather than creating more opportunity for alienation, disconnecting, and taking us always somewhere else, always somewhere else, always somewhere else. Our practice is countercultural in at least two different ways. One of them is philosophically. It's like just a different orientation. And another one is in lived experience, like what we actually do in our lives, what our actions are, as well as our thoughts. And I'd like to share just a few words about both of those kind of tensions as applies to life here at the temple. And I know different people have different levels of experience with the daily life and daily rhythm of the temple here. And one thing of beauty is how many different ways there are to connect to, whether it's through work practice or through peace camp that comes around once a year, or these Sunday services. It's not a one-size-fits-all, or you have to do it a certain way. But there are lots of places where our lives can gain some more of that orientation by overlapping. And so I want to share a few words about the vows of Samantabhadra. Are people familiar with the vows of Samantabhadra? So, like, I didn't know until very recently who Samantabhadra was. It was just sort of like I was late to the game. And Samantabhadra is one of the foundational bodhisattvas in our tradition. And it's the bodhisattva of universal good. And one of the things that Dharma workers, which is one of the programs at the temple, like the people who go through this program, me being one of them, is, engaging with the vows of Samantabhadra. And they include things like honoring all the Buddhas and, repenting of your wrongdoings, of rejoicing in the merits of others. And then the culminating one is to dedicate any merits that you may accrue to the welfare and well-being of all creatures. And so it's sort of, I view that last one as especially countercultural in terms of, let's say, in a traditional Christian framework, or some versions of Buddhism too, where there's a desire to do good for good merit, because we want good merit, right? Doesn't it impact your next rebirth? Am I making that up? I see a lot of blank faces. Have you ever heard the idea of like that karma influences not only this life, but next life? All right. And you want those merit points, right? Like back to the carnival examples, right? You want to gain those tickets so you can redeem them at the end of the game, right? But what happens if the whole thing of like, oh, you get these tickets, but you give them to somebody else? That's like really virtuous. But that doesn't help, if you're building this ego to do the right things, to be a better person, but still to get something. Like there's that built-in almost a kind of capitalism in our spiritual lives. That's a constant temptation, like a continuous improvement project to be the best. So I'll be, recognized. So I'll feel connected. So I'll feel like I'm worthy of being alive in this world. So countercultural to feel like, who you are is already enough. You don't need to do things to earn that. And if you do get merits, that's awesome. But in a big-hearted, compassionate way, how about just giving those merits to somebody else? Because even the idea that our lives are separate from the lives around us is itself an illusion. And that's one of the things that's easy for me to say, like, give lip service to a little bit of like, oh yeah, we're not really separate. We're the same, you and me. It's easier to say that than to actually experience that sometimes. Like, do you feel, I don't know. I don't think I can recreate this, but I'm going to try to. I remember one teacher of mine talking about how even the simple physics of holding an object, it seems like it's a very clear delineation between self and object, just holding this, right? And even physically, right? Like I know what's my skin and what's metal. They're different. But if you take a microscope and look like really close at the atomic level and subatomic level, there are electrons being traded back and forth with this object. So if you look really close, there's parts of me that are already in this bowl and parts of the bowl that are already in me. Like for me, that creates a felt experience that this is like not as easy in black and white as I thought it would be. And the same thing with our lives. Like the people who we encounter that just bump us in a slightly different way along the way. And a few things that are fascinating about the vows of Samantabhadra, coming back to this notion is, the vows come from the Avatamsaka Sutra, which is a delightful read. It's only 1,500 pages. I highly recommend it to all of you. And if you're not a voracious reader, you can skip to the last 100 pages where Samantabhadra makes his grand entrance and shows up and gives his good intentions and where we get the vows from. In many traditions, this circulates as its own separate scripture, just this last chapter, where the pilgrim Buddha goes and meets 53 different teachers, many of whom don't seem like stereotypical teachers. They're not like all monks in monasteries. They're different people that one learns life lessons from. And there's also a delightful rendition of that called The Little Pilgrim, which is a more fictionalized account of it, but very readable, and the same lessons in it. But part of what gets trippy in the Avatamsaka Sutra are some of the notions like, what is the Buddha? Like the idea of to pay homage to all the Buddhas that we see. Because Buddha is in everywhere. Like you could be in the garden gardening, and there's a worm that has Buddha nature in it. And the worm is crawling around a seed that also has Buddha nature in it, and that it echoes both in time and in space. And so there are all of these ways that there are fractals of what we view as real in existence, and that goes infinitely small and infinitely large. But instead of somebody like Blaise Pascal writing about that same phenomenon of the world being infinite in different directions, he says, so that's terrifying because how do you know where you stand? Like you can't find your orientation in that. Whereas in the Avatamsaka Sutra, it says the same thing. It's expansive in all directions, and we're in the middle of Indra's net. We are in relationship to all of this. And so what we do here matters to the next order of magnitude up and also to the next order of magnitude down. It's all connected, and we're enriched by that. That's enough metaphysics. I think that's my metaphysics quota, but it's embedded very concretely in the sutra. That's the grounding for the vows of Samantabhadra, which is part of our training program. And my hope for you today is that you pay attention to your inner world and what your inner experience is like. Don't run through on autopilot, but pay attention to that cockpit of your consciousness in the world. And pay attention to the world around you and how you're interacting with it. And then remember that they're not separate things. They're one and the same. That often our inner states echo out and our outer states echo in. And so try to feel that sense of peace, because having peace within creates more peace without. Acting more peacefully outward helps create more peace inward. And so thank you for hearing these words, and I'd love to hear your wisdom in the room.
Good morning. My name is Sambe, and I thought of an answer to your question of how do you return to the present moment. And that is permission to do it badly many times, and giving myself permission to do it badly many times, and with humor, lots of humor.
Good morning, Sangha. My name's Terrence. I've been coming here kind of on and off for a couple of months now, but never spoke up. I understand what you mean about being quite nervous. When you're holding the microphone, it's kind of a different experience than what you think it's going to be. But I just wanted to say good morning, and I have a little story that I'd like to tell. My bus gets here like 30 minutes before 10 o'clock, which my first time here, I came in and sat down and meditated for that time. And since then, I've decided that's a little too long for me. I was really worn out at the end because, as I said, it's just kind of one breath at a time, you know? So this morning, I walked up to the park that's a couple blocks away and just kind of was walking along and listening to music on my headphones. And this song, I didn't pick the playlist. Spotify just decided to start playing something, and I noticed it was kind of loud and raucous, and I went to almost turn it down. And then I realized, what am I doing wearing headphones, protecting myself from this beautiful morning? And I took them off and I walked, and I heard the birds chirping, and I walked along a little more, and I found a little flower that was kind of on the little green space between the street and the walking place where you put your feet. And I took the little flower because there were more around it. I wasn't robbing anybody else of seeing the flower, and kind of walked a little further along, and I saw a playground in the park, and I was like, oh, this is a school. And then I kind of kept walking, and I saw there's all these little tables, and I thought it might be nice to kind of sit down, and I brought an orange with me. So I thought to myself, oh, maybe I'll sit there. And then I was like, oh, a grown man sitting at an elementary school. I was like, that's not a great look. And then I was like, no kids are here today. And this is just my fear of judgment coming at me again. So I found another flower and I picked it up and I sat down and I pulled out my orange and I peeled it. And these days they have these oranges that just kind of peel off in one piece, one big orange. When I was growing up, you had to kind of pick at it, right? So I take my peel over and I throw it away. And this morning I wore this butterfly shirt because when I was growing up, the butterfly was kind of a really symbolic thing for me because I didn't like who I was and I wanted to change. And the butterfly, it's famously known for changing a couple times in its life. And then one day when I was growing up, I did change. It happened, I felt different and I looked at the world different. And I thought I was a butterfly now, or maybe a pupa or something. And then, a few months to a year later, and it happened again. And I realized that I caught myself, I remembered who I was, and I caught myself doing things that I don't see myself as doing in my self-view. And there was a conflict there. And so I stopped doing those things so I could be closer to the person that I was, and kept moving on. And, a year or two later, it happened again and I changed again. There is another animal that sheds its skin and becomes a new creature every so often. There's a lot of them actually, but the one that comes to mind that's really rich in symbolic tradition is the snake. And there's a lot of negative connotations about the snake. I could probably write a book about how I feel about the snake in the Garden of Eden. That's a whole nother. And I remember I actually told my mom this. I was on the phone with her and I told her, Mom, I don't think I'm a butterfly. I think I'm more of like a snake or something. And she's a born again Christian. So she said, oh, when what she really meant to say was, oh. And I kind of had to explain a little bit of what I meant. The snake is a really rich tradition, even outside of that, like the medical rod, the rod of Asclepius has the caduceus or whatever. I guess those are two separate things, but I don't really know the difference. Has a snake kind of around the rod, and it's a symbol of healing, It's a symbol of rebirth and growth. And what comes out of the dead husk of the old snake, the patterns and dead skin that it's discarded, might not be a different creature, but it is kind of a different creature. It's got bright colors and it's got a new energy. I don't know if you've ever seen a snake after it has molted, but it has, a lot more lease on life, I guess. And sometimes I feel like that. And so I guess my lesson was snakes aren't bad. Snakes aren't evil. They're not slimy. They're not gross. They're not bad. I'm not bad. Even though I'm not a butterfly, even though I'm not a born again Christian that changes once and is bathed in the blood and becomes good, I can experience this endless cycle of rebirth with a smile. I don't have to be self-deprecating about it. So I picked up another flower and I came here. And yesterday I came here for to give my time to the Buddha. And really nobody was here. So we just kind of didn't do very much. And Chichang told me that the last thing that we needed to do was pick flowers for the Buddha from the garden. And I said, that seems like a job for somebody who would enjoy it maybe more than me and would be more talented at it than me. So we didn't pick any flowers that day. But as I was kind of walking back and crossing the road to the Sangha, I thought to look at my phone to find out if I was going to be early or late. And then that stupid quote from Lord of the Rings popped in my head: "A wizard is never late, nor is he early." And instead, I just kind of laughed and didn't touch my phone. And at that moment, I looked down and saw a really bright blue flower, and I added it to my little pile. And I came in and I offered it to the Buddha. And that is pretty much what I have to say.
Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you for the Dharma Talk. You mentioned something about that monkey mind, right? When I was in elementary school in the 50s, they had a book called Curious George. I see some people read it. He was this monkey, and I would read his book, and I was right there with him in my own mind. He was going on all these adventures and stuff. And when you mentioned that monkey mind, that came right to my heart. That was a joyous occasion. My teacher told me, he said, the whole purpose of taking a human birth is to help others and allow yourself to be helped by others when necessary. He said the greatest gift is the gift of giving, and the greatest joy is the joy of freedom. And once we become free through our experience, because that's the only way I can know it, I have to experience it. He said, you're free to move in the 10 directions, young child, and not bump into anything. And he was right. Every morning I wake up with pure joy in my heart, looking forward to my daily activities. And when the occasion comes for me to help someone unconditionally, without a doubt, I'm there to help them. Thank you.
Thank you. My name's Alex, and I love coming to Sangha service on Sundays to hear words from someone who devotes a lot of their time and has committed a lot of time and practice to things that I'm trying to, as a layperson, attain. And then also listening to everyone else speak gives me, I love the community here. I feel like I get my battery recharged from being here. And I am my brain is very, very squirrely lately. I'm actually deciding to try to, for 10 years of SSRI use, to taper off. And I'm noticing a lot of changes physiologically and spiritually and everything. And so this is really, as I'm every week, especially today, when we break from our meditation and say, mind calm, body at ease, I'm like, I am a fraud. I'm not, my mind is not calm, but it's so sacred to have the space to come back. I mean, we, practice this, and I, on a daily basis, try to meditate and bring myself back, to the moment. But every time that's said, I'm like, I'm sorry, everyone. No, but I know that I'm in good company, and I'm only human. And so I'm thinking about this dichotomy always of, doing one thing or aiming to do one thing, this constant conflict of, ego bringing me to the table. But then once I'm at the table, Buddha and essence of all, directions of, existence, like giving away then what got me there. And so I just feel a lot of reassurance from the words today that, because I always feel like that fraud feeling, like, well, honestly, I started from, when I first felt a sense of spirituality or drive to, explore that. What brought me to that, I think most prominently, is wanting something for me. I want to feel better. I want to feel relief. I want, and so for me, it's been predominantly my ego and my desire to feel good that's brought me into something, even something that is so pure. And so, I just, and I dream of snakes. Oh, the snake is very much the symbolic in my life. And I dreamt of one last night. I was climbing over some rocks, and then I got scared. I thought there was definitely a snake in this hole, and I saw a little head, and it ended up not being a snake. But anyway, thank you for being here and being a part of the Sangha to let me exercise and set free that human nature, that shedding of that skin that a week accrues. I think for me, it's a lot of struggle of letting go of all of that armor that I build up. The cockpit, I feel like I live in that cockpit, and I try to get out a lot. And this is one way of doing that. One other thing I'll share that I was thinking was just how, it's again, like this idea of coming to the table, so to speak, reaching for something to be, a better, Buddha or Bodhisattva, just what drives me to that place is that ego. And I feel a lot of fear from people that feel that so confidently say, like, well, this is the right thing to do, leaders or, people with this kind of like no doubt about what is happening right now is the exact right thing. Because for me, it's not ever until later. I feel like I'm just wandering through this experience, trying to do the best thing, simultaneously carrying this weighted backpack of ego that's getting me there. And it's not ever until after that I look back, maybe sometimes years later or moments later, where I'm like, okay, yeah, that was good. Or that could have been done differently. So thank you.
Good morning. My name is Akshaya, and the snake in Hinduism has more of a positive connotation. So I thought I would just share a quick story about a snake. And there's also, just as some background, in the form of Shiva, he's usually got a snake wrapped around his neck, and it's a cobra. I think it has something to do with sort of taming the ego. So this is sort of related to the story. The story is in a book called The Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, who was a Bengali saint in India. And the story goes that once upon a time, there was a snake that lived outside a village. And it was very troubled because people were afraid of it, because they thought that the snake was poisonous and he just wanted to be liked. And so a saint once was walking by where the snake was, and he saw the saintliness of this saint. And so the snake asked, how do I get over this, get people to like me and not be so afraid of me? And the saint said to the snake, just don't bite them. Just be as you are. So one day, so the snake practiced this teaching, and one day a bunch of children found the snake, and they didn't know anything about snakes, so they started, playing with it, and the snake did nothing. It just sort of like went with the flow. And as kids would have it, like they were curious, so they started to pick up the snake. It didn't defend itself in any way, so they started to play with it, and then they started using it as a rope, and then flinging it and beating it and basically abusing it, and the snake did nothing. So the snake was completely broken. All its bones were broken, and it just lay there helpless on the side of the road after the kids were done with it. And this saint was walking by again and looked at this snake completely broken and said, "What happened to you?" He said, "Master, you told me not to bite anyone. And so these kids found me and they started treating me as a toy and as a rope, and they broke me." And the saint said, "Well, I told you not to bite. I didn't tell you not to hiss." And that hissing is actually a form of protection for the snake. And so the way I've understood this story, and I've paraphrased it a lot, so don't quote me on the exact details, it's probably much better in the original Ramakrishna book, is this idea that for me to operate in the world, I have to have an ego. It's not possible to interact with the world, with other humans, to have relationship, to be in a business environment or even in an intimate relationship without some functioning ego. The work is for me to have a positive, healthy ego that is able to hiss when necessary for protection. And I think for many of us who have maybe intense adverse childhood experiences or trauma growing up, I think part of the work is actually to cultivate a healthy ego instead of completely trying to eradicate it. I think it's important to first have some level of protection in order to operate in the world, in the temple, and to have healthy relationships. So thank you.
So much wisdom in this room. I don't think I could give a fair summary, but one analogy that comes to mind is it's sometimes said in churches that, a church isn't a museum for saints, it's a hospital for sinners. And so, the term sinner is complicated because for many reasons, but I'm just thinking of a Sangha too, of not being a place that's a museum for saints or people where you're expected to be a perfect bodhisattva. And, but, we're here together figuring this out, and we, suffering together, working with our egos in different ways, trying to be more skillful with what we have. And thank you to each of you for being part of this community and part of this journey together. I'm looking forward to future conversations. Do we do the great vow standing or sitting? Standing, all right. Let's say our 4 great vows. All beings, one body, I vow to liberate.
All beings, one body, I vow to liberate.
Blind passions, one root, I vow to terminate.
Blind passions, one root, I vow to terminate.
Dharma gates, one mind, I vow to penetrate.
Dharma gates, one mind, I vow to penetrate.
The great way of Buddha, I vow to realize.
The great way of Buddha, I vow to realize.
3 vows. I invite our announcements for today.
I guess everyone could sit down if they want. Yes.
How long are the announcements? No, sorry, just.
They're usually 2 pages, but we're pretty lucky today. Okay, so who's here for the first time today? You know, there was somebody we met. Oh, the second time. Oh, well, thank you for coming back, and you're always welcome here. Thank you. The family services will be suspended until September. They'll start up again in September. Is Recovery Dharma meeting today? Does anyone know? You know what? We don't have Mike. Oh, yeah, so no Mike, no Dharma? Oh, okay. Okay. All right, so one really good way to engage with the Sangha is on Saturdays from 3 to 5. We have community building and work practice, and it's really a good time. I mean, we really end up enjoying it, and we have snacks afterwards, and that's always worth something. So, anyone who wants to join our audiovisual team, we need help running our sound booth and live streaming services on Sunday. So if you're interested in that, please come forward. Peace Camp is recruiting counselors for our younger campers. Peace Camp is August 1st through the 6th. And let's see, Zen retreats. Summer Youngman Junction at Spring Wind Farm in upstate New York is going on right now. So we can hold them in our thoughts. Let's see what else. Peace Camp. Oh yeah, I already said that. All right. Let's see. Study groups in the Sangha House Meditation Hall. Oh yeah, there's always a member sitting every Wednesday at 6:30 to 8. And there's the Way of the Bodhisattva group, which is Thursdays from 9:15 to 10 via Zoom or in person. So for your health, we have Qigong at 6:30 on Monday. So.
And 2 quick additional updates. Our Wednesday sitting is a regular, we usually have extended Wednesday evenings, but for the next 2 weeks, they're the regular evening sittings like we have on Tuesdays and Thursdays also. So it'll be a shorter format, but still happening Wednesday at 6:30.
Okay.
And also, if anybody is interested in learning more about the Dharma Worker Program or Temple Life, please feel free to see me after the service or send an email to one of our teachers.
Okay, that's all.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You didn't mention the fishbowl.
Oh, the fishbowl. The fishbowl is where we make contributions, and there's also a QR code where you can make contributions as well.
And it's right outside the door on the left.
Yeah.
Where is it?
Yeah, it's right there. You can't miss it.
Namaste. Say again? Oh, yeah, the last 2 rows and the last 1 row on that side. And so cushions and mats go in the back corner on that side and just over here on this side. I'll see you up there.